right, and there's that.
This episode of the
Off-road.
Off-Road Podcast is sponsored by Warren, Power Tank, and Medical Gear Outfitters.
Off-Road Podcast, episode 273, Metal Cloak interview.
Tonight, Aaron says to heck with the Jeeps, Jeremy does a little dreaming, and Ben blacks out.
Welcome to the Off-Road Podcast, the podcast about everything off-road. We cover the news, review products, and interview people in the off-road industry. I'm your host, Ben, and I'm here with my co-host, Jeremy. And tonight joining us is Matson Breakerly?
Breaky.
Achy breaky. Just think achy breaky.
The co-founder and VP of Sales and Business Development.
Oh, at Metal Cloak. I forgot to type that into the notes.
Extra professional here tonight.
So, Ben, what have you been up to this week?
Nothing much. Getting ready to do some camping this weekend. I've been itching. It's fall. Less people are going to be out there though with hunting season starting up. I'll be running across those guys, so all's good. I did get some really sweet Colby valves that are in testing. They're talking about going to production with them. They're onyx. They're black. They're aluminum. They're like 3 times or 75% lighter, I think is what he said. They're lighter, and they're supposed to be a little bit stronger, but they cost a lot more to make, so they're not sure whether or not they're going to go out and make them. But they're black, like black on black on black. So with my new wheels and eventually my new tires, it's going to look pretty awesome. Other than that, I didn't end up getting that axle. Someone else bought it, and I got measured for some net barriers for my Forerunner from Toyota Nets. She's a local gal that does like net barriers for Toyotas, and she has some Jeep patterns and stuff too. So I'm gonna put up a pet barrier in the back to keep my dog from trying to jump over the seats anymore. Like, stay in the back, Ava.
You don't like her jumping over onto the kids and getting muddy paws everywhere?
Actually, it really doesn't bother me that much. But if I can maintain the area and keep it in a less space, more the better. So yeah. What about you? What's new, man?
Well, just been doing a lot more web wheeling. Can't wait to get my Jeep off the jack stands. I'm still waiting on the insurance company to give me their estimate of what they're going to give me. Other than that, I had to refix the countershaft seal on my bike. It turns out I lost the dome washer, and I thought, well, I'll just put a thick washer on there, and it should provide enough tension on it to keep it from leaking by the O-ring. Yeah, it did not put enough tension on it. So
Oh no.
I blew the seal again and lost, like, when I got back to my bike after work, I had probably about a quarter of a cup of oil sitting on the ground. I'm like, yeah, that's not good.
Is that an expensive seal to replace again?
No, it was $13. So I ended up losing the washer and the bolt. I had a spare bolt and thought, because I forgot to torque it down, and so I thought, well, I don't want to spend $20 on the new washer. And turns out at the local KTM shop, I only spent $13 in parts for the new seal, new O-ring, and the new bolt and a new dome washer. The only thing that they didn't have in stock was there's kind of this little metal sleeve that goes in that puts pressure on the O-ring, and that's actually what seals it, and that actually spins with the counter shaft. But since the one I had only been in for, I don't know, 100 miles, it's not like it developed any grooves or anything that's going to cause it to leak. So I just threw the old one back in there.
How dare you reuse old parts?
I think it'll be fine.
Oh, okay. You'll find out, right? If there's another oil leak right there.
Let's hope not. I've already changed it 3 times since I've owned the bike.
Oh, it happens. Matson, how are you doing, man?
Good, man. Just keep them busy. Try to keep things crazy with this whole 2020 world we're living in.
Yeah, I can't. I just kind of being in the auto industry now, like parts and stuff. I mean, that's got to be a pain. And people are home, so they want to work on their stuff more sometimes, depending upon if they're working or not. And it's been interesting, especially with parts from Asia and all that.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. I mean, when this whole thing started out, it was, yeah, okay, let's put the brakes on everything. Let's hold out. Let's wait. Not sure what's going to happen. So we stopped, like a lot of companies. We stepped back and said, whoa, wait a second. Let's cancel some POs. Let's take a breather. Well, I think we're still playing catch up to that because it just went on and on and on. And like you said, all these guys sitting at home going, what am I going to do? Well, some people are doing landscaping, hence Home Depot and Lowe's being sold out of stuff. Others, like off-roaders, building their bikes, building their Jeeps. And it's just been great for all of us, but it is definitely was unexpected.
For sure.
So now you guys, this is a cool show. You've been doing this how many times? This is what, 200? You were just telling me 270 something. I missed the intro of the episode. We actually said what episode number this was.
Yeah, 273.
273.
Yep.
And how many of those have you guys done?
I started at like 47.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I came on the show, I think about 140, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Something
Wow.
like that.
That's a lot. I mean, we have our Modern Jeeper show, and I think we just did like 80 something, and that's 2 years worth almost. Because we do one a week, and for you guys to have done this that long, that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's
just
part of the discipline too. I mean, I want your listeners to understand, like, this is 7 p.m. on a Monday. You're not doing this in the middle of the day and getting away to do it as part of your day job. You're taking a Monday evening and making this happen every Monday evening. That's incredible.
That'd be great to make it part of my day job.
Yeah. See, I have that excuse. I can sit here and do our show, and it's like, yeah, middle of the day, it's my job, marketing. But to be able to do that, I had to go and get permission from the wife to be able to be here and not taking care of the 3 kids.
Yeah, mine are unattended inside right now. Jeremy joined at 186.
186.
Oh, I thought it was earlier than that. Whatever.
Nope, it seems longer.
Yeah, it seems longer.
Yeah.
So what has been the focus of the show over the time? See, I'm going to start interviewing you guys. So
what has been, it's kind of been all over. I really like originally how the show was more information, and then I brought in I wanted to get more in touch with the industry, and I brought in more of a interviews inside the industry and then people and listen our listeners. That was kind of how I got on the show, was a listener ride interview, and then I just never left.
They're just one of those guys that just parks themselves there, and it's like, who's this guy? I don't know. Might as well make him part of the show.
It's kind of what happened with me.
Yeah. Jeremy came on the Washington Backcountry Discovery Trip with me as a listener that just wanted to join along, and then I interviewed him while we were on the trail, and I just, then it was like, hey, come on the show and we can talk about the trip more.
Well, it's cool that you guys do these adventures too. I was looking at some of the reviews and the comments and on iTunes for you. And part of that was kind of the big thing. You actually get out and do these events and get your listeners to come out and join you. Yeah,
try to as much as we can.
Well, see, there you go. Now that's the excuse. All those expenses. It's great. No, sweetheart, we're going for a week. It's part of the show.
Yeah. Well, and I've got my kids involved now, so it makes it even that much more fun.
Yeah, I feel bad. I got a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 15-month-old, and I probably haven't had them out wheeling as much as I should have.
Oh, you got to start
ingrained.
I've got 2, 4, and 6. My 6-year-old's gone snow camping with us.
Wow.
He's been on a lot of trips with us. Actually, he was on our Natchez run when he ended up. I broke my Forerunner. He burned his hand. We had to use our buddy's AAA, and we rode back in his Jeep. It was a fun trip.
That's all part of the adventure. those are the memories of a lifetime right there.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, this week in review has been brought to you by Medical Gear Outfitters. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting to have a casualty on the trail? Check out medicalgearoutfitters.com to get straightened out. Medical Gear Outfitters has everything you need, whether you are going out for the day or traveling on a year-long expedition. Head over there to get the off-road specific medical kits that will be coming out soon, and they will meet all of your needs.
Oh, I'm so excited for those kits.
Oh gosh, yes.
Skinny was texting me. He's getting down on the price, and we're pretty close. We've got 2 kits coming out that we helped build. One of them is a smaller kit, and it may be smaller, but that thing is loaded, absolutely loaded. The bag is so full that there's not much room left to fit in it. And then there's a huge kit, and that thing's a monster.
Comes in a huge
Nice.
Pelican-like case.
Yeah,
And
what is it? Nanook?
Yeah, that was the brand.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hey guys, we're looking to reach more listeners. We're going to start reading Apple iTunes reviews on air. If you hear yours, send us a message with your address, and we'll send you an Off-Road Podcast sticker. You can find all of our social media by just searching our name. Now, go hit that subscribe button.
Also, check out Patriot Patch Company for the Patch of the Month Club. This is if you're watching on YouTube, I got the Patch of the Month from this last month. And Ben, have you seen the new one? I haven't seen the new one drop yet.
I've not seen it in my mailbox yet, but I mean, we've still got. They announced it early. It's the was it not the zombie, the mummy with the Mac 10s?
Oh yeah, I remember that one now. They released it so long ago, it feels like it's we've already got it or something.
Yeah, just gotta wait for it to show up. Did you actually? Aaron shared in our little chat. Did you see the patch he got?
I did. I don't know how he got that one.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little salty about that. Oh well, it is what it is, right?
Maybe he's trolling again.
Could be, or Ryan Cross hooked him up.
Probably that.
The news is brought to you by Power Tank, the ultimate mobile onboard air system for performance, versatility, and reliability. They are your source for all air-related accessories. Check them out at powertank.com.
Matson, I was just thinking I was going to throw the first news article to you to read, but then I just realized, oh yeah, you didn't want to see the notes.
I got to say, I'm very happy that Power Tank's sponsoring you guys. We just interviewed Steve Sasaki on our podcast. Incredible story about their start.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's a real great guy too. He's very talkative, very good podcast, a very good podcast interview. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Oh.
Yeah, I really got a kick out of how we met Steve and Tyler. His son was at the Northwest Overland rally, and we were doing our whiskey tasting at the Warren booth. And Steve walked by and was getting some whiskey. And he's like, "Oh, are you guys with Warren?" Like, "No, we're the Off-Road Podcast." And we didn't have any shirts marking us or anything. And he's like, "Oh, what's that about?" And so we started talking about that. And then it turned out that they were camped right across from us. And then he came over the next day to ask about some spots to go wheeling. And I was like, we've got some plans, but I'm going to cancel them and let's go wheeling. And we were trying to podcast stuff all weekend. Made Jeremy a little upset. Then we went. We had fun, and it worked out for the best. I mean, we made some really good friends with Steve and Tyler, and we had a fun trip.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta say to the heck with the plans.
Yeah,
that's like me screwing with your entire agenda for the show.
Hey, it makes things interesting.
So what's the news of the day?
Well,
go ahead, Ben.
All right. Well, the first story here is Jeep adds 3 years of free maintenance for all 2021 Jeeps. Apparently, they felt a little threatened by the Bronco. One could wonder why.
You think?
So they've had the Jeep Wave program around for a while, and they've had the option for some free maintenance. I think it was like for 2 years, for their loyalty program. and then you could pay a little extra to get into the program. I can't remember exactly how it works, but it consisted of oil changes and tire rotations, and then you get like $1,000 worth of trip interruption if your Jeep's more than 100 miles away from home. It was something like that. But so they've added that now to all of the higher end Wranglers. So for the Wrangler, the Gladiator, the Grand Cherokee, the Trailhawks, Trackhawks, Summit, High Altitude, and the SRTs. So I don't
Yep.
know. It's pretty cool. It's I
They're
guess they felt threatened and wanted to bump up that program.
trying to make it more, give you more benefits for buying the Jeep.
Oh well, yeah, especially if they break down, right?
Yeah.
Well, that is part of the challenge. Like even when I have a Chrysler minivan, and the warranty on it was terrible. The period of time on it was like 3 years or 30,000 miles. And whatever happened to the 10 years, 100,000 miles? Oh wait, that's Hyundai and Kia,
And Toyota.
and Toyota. But no, not Jeep. No, instead you just get the long list of little recall here, recall there, recall here.
And fighting for the recalls. I know they finally did. So after I sold my Jeep, I had a JK. They finally did a clock spring recall on it after I'd already replaced my clock spring, like out of my pocket. I'm like, come on, really?
Well, that's like the steering stabilizer problem. I mean, most people went out and bought their Jeeps and they replaced their steering stabilizer. Oh yeah, by the way, you can come in and get your steering stabilizer replaced. Like, just give me some money. Just give me some cash. Pay for the one that I just put on my rig.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Need the Metal Cloak trade-in program.
Well, the next article definitely tells you why Jeep is a little bit nervous. Ford just announced that the Bronco will get a manual with the Sasquatch package. So, as we kind of talked about on the show when they released the Bronco, the Sasquatch package, which was their top end package, you could not get it with the manual. You were stuck with the automatic transmission. So now you can get that 7-speed automatic in any trim, body style, and with any engine.
I definitely Ford is going out there. There was, and we don't have this in the stories because there wasn't really. Well, I guess there was a story about it. There was that Jeep that got stuck down there in California.
Yeah. What, the mountain bike trail guy?
Yeah,
the mountain bike trail guy. And he was, what was it? Ford was like offering to go recover him.
I got to tell you, man, I've talked to a few people that are very well known in the off-road world that are going out. Like Ford is heavily investing in them. We're talking about Ultra 4 guys. We're talking about Ford has gone all in, and they're really going after this market. They're really sinking some money into it, and their marketing guys over there are having a blast. There's a lot of fun when you're marketing. You have a singular target to go after. And that's what they get. Here's the money. Go spend it. Let's make this rig a blowout and just have fun with it. So they're loving it. They're loving every minute of it.
Oh yeah,
it's good. It's good to see the competition out there. I mean, for your super capable off-road vehicles, I mean, what in the last 10 years it's been Toyota and Jeep's kind of reigned supreme in it with having a solid axle. But like seeing the Bronco come out and do the Rubicon factory, I don't know how factory they were, but do the Rubicon all factory IFS, and they did what they did the Rubicon, they did Moab. Who knows what else they've done with it. They're like, hey, let's prove that this is going to be a capable vehicle, and it's making Jeep go, oh, what can we do to improve? What can we do to keep our customers? And it's good. It's good.
Absolutely. And and for all of us, that competition's leading not only from Jeep, but over into the Dodge market, right?
Yeah.
You got the TRX, and the rumor is Ford's got a 760 horsepower answer to the TRX coming out. So it's going to be fun. I mean, I love it. I'm excited. Get to see all this stuff happening. And we'll get our hands on a Bronco at some point and check it out and see if there's anything we can do to it. So, and it just makes it great for all of us in the industry to have this competition, have this fun, and go out and play with these things.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed to see what some of the other brands haven't done. It's like the Chevy Trailblazer coming out, and it was just such a disappointment. It's like, is GMC going to do anything now? Come on. Is Hyundai going to do something? I mean, Kia had the Telluride that's actually somewhat decent. Can they step it up a notch? Off-road Telluride?
I honestly wouldn't discount that whole Hyundai Kia industry over there. But General Motors, I don't know. I mean, look, they've been pretty down to their core. But if you look at the kind of company and you look at the management, and you look at what they're doing, they're just keeping things down at their core level. They're not pushing it. They're not being inventive, right? They're just maintaining that core discipline that's going to meet the needs of their shareholders and meet the needs of their ownership and meet the needs of their employees. The biggest thing they've done was the Volt, and that was how long ago? So I don't know. You're not going to really see a big change from them.
10 years ago?
Right. And whereas Ford, I mean, look, how many companies went out and said, we're not going to do passenger cars anymore. What do they got? The Mustang and then some leftover Focuses, and everything else is SUVs and trucks. I mean, nobody else has done that. And then, of course, you've got Jeep that gets to do whatever they want because now they're part of one of the biggest companies in the world, and they're worth so much money that they get to play. But even then, we get a little confused, like, okay, I got to build one more platform of skid plates for the 4XE. Then I got to figure out what the weight is of the 4XE and build another set of springs. And it's like, come on, focus. It's like I tell my kids.
That 4XE, I really like that. I'm impressed, but I'll be more impressed when I see it in action.
That's for all of us. It's kind of funny because a lot of people in the industry don't know how big Metal Cloak is or what we do, and really it's a small company in the overall scheme of things. And we don't have all the connections and contacts. Jeep doesn't call us and say, hey, we want you to check out this new thing. Come on in and come get a sneak peek of it and build some. So when the products start coming out, we start getting the emails of, hey, so are you going to have a new suspension system for the 4XE or for the diesel? And I love our customers, but I have to disappoint them and say, as soon as you get one or we get one of us will have one, and we'll be able to figure it out and figure out what we're going to do. Same with the Bronco. It's like, I made phone calls. I did make phone calls. Even my best buddies are like, yeah, sorry, can't let you see it. A lot different from back in the day when the JK came out. The position was totally different. When the JK came out, companies like Rubicon Express, who were very close with Jeep, were called, and the engineers from all these different companies went out and got to see the JK and actually look at it, got to go and look underneath it, bring out the measuring tape, figure things out, and start designing based on the data they got almost immediately before it was even released. But as you know, Jeep and Ford both learned this lesson and created this whole mystery. And now it's like, okay, where's the big mystery? Oh, there's a photo. I'm going to get a photo bomb. Oh, no, I made it on Instagram.
Well, it's really interesting with that. And I commented this on our Bronco episode, was that the Broncos, they've already got all these aftermarket accessories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, they're kind of centralizing it under their roof with who they want to do it. So it kind of boots out the little guy.
Well, what I was told is that anybody who wanted to, who was really excited about it and reached out to them early on, could have been involved in the process. But of course, they had their favorites because they had companies that already had relationships with Ford. But they were really open to anybody building lines for it. Wasn't in our wheelhouse, wasn't in our focus, so we didn't even reach out. But I learned about that after the fact, that they really were going to companies that had some line with Ford and saying, hey, let's see what you can do. Supposedly, they're going to be releasing the DXF files a lot sooner. Like Jeep still hasn't really released the DXF files. They exist because I think they got released on SEMA like for 24 hours one day, and then they were taken down. But Ford supposedly were releasing those, which makes it a lot easier for companies to design based on. All of our designs, we don't have the DXF files for the Jeep. All of our designs are based on having the big arm, the big roamer arm with a little laser scanner and scanning the entire JL, scanning the entire Gladiator, and figuring out all our little designs and measurements and everything we're doing for our body armor, bumpers, et cetera, based on our own scans. But man, it would have been so much easier to have the DXF files.
Oh, that would definitely make your life a whole lot easier.
Mm. So if you know anybody,
Be prepared with Warren Industries. Produced the first recreational winch in 1959 and lead the industry with their dedication to quality and reliability. When you dig yourself in deep, make sure you have the right tools to get yourself out. Get Warren equipped and go where others can't. Now, let's get ready for adventure and head into our main topic.
Well, as we said earlier, we have Matson Brakey here from Metal Cloak, and we always like to start out our interviews just by getting to know you a little bit first. So let's start out with our Fast 5 Facts. These are just meant to have you just answer to the first thing that came to your head, and as soon as you're ready, we'll get going on that.
let's do it.
All right, new or old vehicle?
What was that?
New or old vehicle?
New.
Summer or winter camping?
Oh, I love both. That's a tough one. But we always do a winter camp trip, so I'll have to take that.
Rock, sand, snow, or mud?
Out here, it's all about sands and rock.
Favorite vehicle brand?
Oh, come on, Jeep.
I knew that was going to be an easy one. And favorite tire?
Milestar Patagonia. Love those.
There's been a lot of people getting on that bandwagon recently.
Yeah, I was the first one over here at Metal Cloak that got a set of Milestars because Martin over there and Andrew over there, old friends from the Falcon days. When I had my 4500 class car, Martin and Andrew hooked me up with being able to race on the Falcons when Falcon was really big into it and putting a lot in. So, it's like, hey, I'm just building up my personal JK. They say, hey, try a set of these. And it wasn't even supposed to be a big relationship. Just here's a set of 37s. One, they're incredibly quiet. I mean, for 37-inch knobby tires, they are quiet. And two, they hook up. And so I'm like, wow, I'm impressed by these. They're a little different. And in fact, I had to correct myself because I have a video, I did a bunch of things called Metal Cloak Minutes. And those Metal Cloak Minutes were meant to be frequently asked questions answered. One little minute. One of them was about tire pressure. One of the primary complaints we might get from a customer who puts a suspension on is the ride quality sucks or isn't quite what it should be. Like, well, our first question is, what's your tire pressure? You guys might have some Nittos or Toyos or some other tire on there and have them set at like 45 PSI or 40 or whatever. So you bring that down to 25 on 37s, you'll find a much better ride quality. And I out there and I said that about, that's sad for all tires. And so we were correcting people on it. That's how I had my Milestars running. But the Milestars are set up to actually be run at the PSI on the side of the tire. They were designed essentially for Jeep type vehicles. They weren't truck tires being transferred to a Jeep. They were Jeep tires. And I found a real big difference because when I used to run them at 25, and I'm the type of guy, I take off the line a little bit faster than I should. I like speed. When it's raining outside and I was doing that with the Milestars, I was incredibly disappointed because I would swerve all over the place. Like, whoa, this is fun. And I thought, well, that's bad. So I call up Andrew and I'm talking to him over there and explain this to him. And then I learned the way the tires are set up, that center section has to get full contact. And when you have proper PSI, that center section is getting full contact. And that made a huge difference. So running them at full PSI, they're fantastic. They run, they do everything I need them to do. They're a 30,000 mile tire. And as the guys at Milestar will say, right, they're a class 2 tire for a class 1 audience. Or maybe they say class 3, class 2. I don't know. But you can listen to Tires 101 episode on Modern Jeeper podcast. But they're just great little tires. And it's been amazing to see over the last year to 2 years how much they've caught on because the price point is great. You just can't beat the price point for what you're getting.
Yeah, my buddy John Matthews races Ultra 4, and he runs Milestars, and he really loves them. I think he's running 40s.
I just have no complaints about it. And the company's a great company, and it's a family-owned company. So they're very responsive too. I mean, they have the 40s and the 42s coming out. I mean, they have the ability. When we used to go to Falcon and say, where's the 40-inch tires, right? The biggest they ever had, I think, was the 38s or whatever. Go to Falcon with 40-inch tires. Well, the guys in Japan never wanted to make 40-inch tires. They don't want to produce 100,000 40-inch tires. They want to turn on the machine and produce 2 million tires. So to do like just 100,000, even 50,000 40-inch tires, that didn't make sense to them. There wasn't the economics of it. But over at Milestar, they can go, hey, let's make a small tweak to the tread and make it better like that. Let's do a run of 42s, right? Let's do a little bit bigger. Let's do a little different tire. Let's do the black labels, right? They can get away with that because they're a smaller company that can be more responsive. And I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. One of the benefits of being a little bit smaller, you jump on that next trend pretty easily. You're not trying to move the huge machine.
All right. So you learned about me from those 5 questions. So what did you actually learn?
Well, we do have some more.
So how did you get started in off-roading?
How did I get started in off-roading? Gosh, well, let's see. I used to have a Chevy Blazer. And this is my confessional. It was a 92. Last year, they made the big steel body with a removable back, right? Love that rig. I honestly have no clue. And at that time, I look at why the F would anybody want 4 low? 4 high was my baby. So for me, off-roading was always going fast. Up the hills, down the hills, around the curve. If I could find a way to get off the highway and onto the side dirt and keep it at 4 high, I was happy. Like I didn't get 4 low. I wasn't a rock crawler. Now the funny thing is, growing up, high school, I had a bunch of high school buddies, and I talk about this with the Cal Ford guys out here, because all the buddies, right? They had the rigs. I had a buddy with a flat fender. I worked at a service station. He had a flat fender. Another guy had an old early Bronco, and they were nice and built. Probably, I think about it, and they were probably on 33s at the time. But, it seemed like they were nice and built and big, but they were probably running 33s. And almost every weekend, they used to hit the Rubicon. They go out there and hit the Rubicon, come back, and almost every weekend they'd come back with sliced tires. At least one tire needed to be replaced or something. So I kind of grew up around that, but to me, still, it was go fast. It wasn't until I got a 93 YJ and started going out and playing, and that was built. It happened to have an Atlas in it, and happened to have 44s front and rear, totally built rig, Rubicon Express spring over reverse shackle kit on it. That I really got into the idea of going slow. It's the saying, it's the biggest adrenaline rush at 3 miles an hour. Going slow, going up things, going down stuff. I still, to this day, part of this commercial, I hate off camber, but I can handle everything else. But I hate off camber. That is just, I don't care how safe it is. You're on that angle, you're looking down, like, hey, is my wheel okay? Is my wheel okay? Is my wheel okay? But yeah, so for me, I was all about going fast. And then somebody introduced me to the idea of going slow and going up these crazy things. And you just get addicted from there.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you with the off camber. I hate off camber stuff. Inclines, declines, fine. Off camber always gets me. I never really trust my spotter when he's telling me you're good, you're good, you're good. Just that mental block.
Inclines, you can do something about. You can either really go fast, or you can just slam out of it and go reverse. Going down, same thing. You can drive out of it.
Yep.
Off camber, what are you going to do?
Yep. You can't do anything. You tuck and roll. So I'm assuming that Blazer was your first off-road vehicle. What do you drive now?
So we've got a fleet here at Metal Cloak, of course. And then my personal fleet, I've got a 98 TJ with a 3.5-inch lift on it, running 35s. Really, it's the wife's rig. It's just for fun. I've got my 08 JK, which everybody has seen, big yellow thing. It's got Metal Cloak logos and everything else and sponsor logos all around. And that's got It's got our 3.5 in it and 37-inch mile stars, and it's got a roof rack and all this fun stuff. But I just bought a couple months ago my new, because you say, we asked the question like new or old. I'm in the new mode, so that's why I answered the question. Otherwise, I've always all my life owned used vehicles. This is the first new vehicle I ever bought myself. It is a Gladiator, a pumpkin Gladiator. Rubicon, had to find it. Matching top is just, I love orange. Orange is my favorite color. Love the Max Tracks behind you there. Orange, everything orange is good. But I had to go buy this new one. It's the first time. So we're going to do a little building on it and adding more to it, doing 38 mile stars, 3.5-inch lifts, et cetera, et cetera. But that is my favorite vehicle right now.
I've gotten to drive a Gladiator finally, and I gotta say, it wasn't off road, unfortunately. It was a customer's vehicle, but it drove nice. I had forgotten what it was like to drive a Jeep, and it was like, oh, I like this. I kind of want one now.
They're nice, and the JL and the JT, they're luxury cars. And they have all the amenities, right? And they're nice. You're comfortable. And the leather seats. I have 3 car seats in the back for the 3 kids, and the kids love it. And now this is also my first pickup. I mean, having the Blazer was one thing, but this is my first pickup, and it's so cool that I could just have my water bottle, be done with it, and throw it in the back of the bed. I mean, that's my favorite part. Just throw throw shit in the back of the bed.
Yeah, you got to use it. That's what the
I
space
love
is there for, right?
Because here at Metal Cloak, I've got a couple diesels, right? We've got our vehicles for towing and all that kind of stuff. But there's a difference between having fleet vehicles, because we've got our Cloak 3, which is our LS powered JK. We've got Cloak 1, which is our very first TJ that we built up. We've got an LJ in the fleet. We have a 2-door JL, a 4-door JL, another JK in the fleet. It's amped. I think it's a 14 amped JK with a rack on it. A 2014 Dodge with our prototype Dodge lift on it. A 2015 Dodge that really is just used as a tow rig to take our CTI trailers out every place. Then, of course, a couple of work trucks. So we got far too many rigs and a couple of project vehicles. We got one that's been, the CJ conversion that is a YJ to CJ to TJ. And we've got the one that we've shown a little bit of, which is our modern Jeeper rig that's using the aluminum, the big Aqualoo tub, extended stretch. I think it's stretched, a foot or two more. So we had to stretch the JK frame another 18 inches. And so all these other project rigs and lots of vehicles in the fleet. But it's a difference between having those, where quite honestly, I have to be careful when I drive them out to do events with them, because we can beat them up, but I got to pay for it if I break it.
Yeah.
Versus my own personal rig, right? There's a lot of fun in having your own personal rig where it is yours and you get to play with it and do what you want. And my business partners can't complain when I do something bad with it.
I think the real question is, how do you decide which one to drive every single day?
Oh man. For the personal one, it's like I said, I'm into the new. Like,
yeah,
there was a period this summer though. I was loving this summer because I actually put everything into the TJ. I started driving the TJ. I took the top down on the TJ, and I was just having fun driving that. It's got a short arm kit on it, and I love, guys that do long arms. There's a certain feel to a long arm. A long arm gives you that smooth, that floaty feeling, right? And it's some people on rails, whatever. Being a racer, I like feeling the ground. I like feeling this. So I like the short arm. So I have our little 3.5-inch short arm kit, and that thing still drives as if it's a little sports car. I honestly want to take a TJ, slam it to the ground, and make it into a kart racer, because they're just so much fun. But doing that so I was doing that, the TJ over the summer, and then we got the fires. So actually, just last weekend, I pulled out the leaf blower and finally got rid of all the ash that had built up inside the TJ over the last 3 weeks of just ash settling down into our town, ash settling down on everything. But now it's the Gladiator. I got to just love it. Hop in, I can plug in my phone and immediately start listening to you guys on the podcast. It's great.
So, what is your most embarrassing moment on the trail?
well, let's see. The most embarrassing moment. Well, let's see. I was known as the guy who would break things. There was 2 moments, but the best was the one that was only seen by a few people. I had it was TDS, Terra del Sol, which if you guys have been out there, Salton Sea area, it's amazing. A lot of great places to go fast. This was late at night. I had Cloak 3 before the Cloak 3 had the LS, and it just was it's a 2009, so it just had the 3.8 in it, had our suspension system and all this kind of stuff. I had 2 guys from Rugged Radios. I had one of my own sales guys in the passenger seat. And the thing you do at TDS on Saturday night is you hop in your Jeep and you drive out to the Notches. Now, if you've never been to the Notches, this is an ultimate shit show. It is a craziness of people out there, trucks going up there, you're standing on the ledge and looking down at rigs going by you, and they'll just turn right and go right up at you. And it's up to the crowd to move out of the way. It is craziness. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. We're heading out there. Well, I happen to see somebody who from another company that is, I shall remain unnamed, but he was driving in his JK, and I was like, I know that my suspension can do better in this environment than his suspension, so I'm just going to blow past him. So I went flying past him, went running around. Well, at the time, I only had headlights. The particular company whose headlights I had, kind of the agreement was you don't do a light bar, you just do the headlights. That wasn't quite enough, because as I went around a turn, I looked around and all I saw were whoops ahead of me.
Oh, God.
Now, 3 choices. I could have slammed on the brakes and hoped that I got there fast enough. Got to those brakes fast enough and didn't go into one of those whoops. I could have accelerated and tried to fly through those whoops. Or I could ride it out. Those are the 3 things going in my head in like a matter of a millisecond. And not knowing how many whoops there were there, I discounted flying through them because it could have just been like a real shit show. Then I decided not to break it because there's no way to brake. I wasn't going to stop in time. So I rode it out. Put a little bit of brake and just rode it out. Well, the first one was a first hit, second hit, third one landed up. The rear end had to have gone up 6 to 8 feet, and then boom, landed down. Everybody in the rig, thankfully, everybody was wearing their seatbelts. Got out of the rig. Like everything's working. Like the steering wheel disconnected. Like the steering wheel had actually like come loose from the little adjuster that allows you to adjust it. So I adjusted it back, and I'm like, everything's moving. Okay, it's running. It started up. All right, I'm good. So I drove out, drove to the Notches. In the back of my mind, the only thing I can think of is the guys I just passed saw me. They saw this. Like this is going to be the most embarrassing point. We get over to the Notches. We park. We do our thing. We're walking around, and I see them, and I walk up to them and say, "Oh man, look at that! What? Oh, they didn't see it." I'm like wiping my brow. "Oh, you didn't see that? No. What'd you do? Oh, nothing. Don't worry about it." No big deal. Went back, loaded back up, drove back after the Notches an hour or so later. Everything's fine. Get back, park the rig, go to bed, whatever, after a few drinks. Next morning, get up, start loading it up. And one of my guys comes over and goes, "Have you seen the rear axle?" No. So go back to the rear axle. There's a nice smile on the rear axle. Okay, well, that's not a big deal. That's fine. I messed that up. Okay, fine, whatever. It could be worse. Then he goes, hey, same guy. "Hey, Matson, come look at this." I'm like, oh. Walk over there. Now, imagine, the coil buckets, right? The coil buckets, they're flat on top, and the coil sits in there, and the jounce is there. Now, imagine what happens if you put a ton of force between your bump stops and the jounce, and something has to give. Well, the coil buckets were tacoed. Both sides, tacoed. Now, I would like to point out, my 6-pack shocks were fine. My Metal Cloak suspension system was fine. Everything I made was fine. All the stock Jeep stuff. Now, I also had a Dynatrac front axle. And you can imagine that if the rear axle was all messed up, that front axle must have been messed up too. No. I'll give huge kudos to Dynatrac. Ball joints, yes. Had to replace the ball joints. Axle, no. Axle was beautiful. That axle is still in. That actually, until we changed it up, I think we recently, just last year, even though we had an LS in the thing, we just last year changed up the front axle. Was doing fine. So kudos to Dynatrac. Kudos to Metal Cloak engineers. That's why I was known as a cheap Jeep abuser. That's one of multiple stories I could tell you, but that was probably the most fun. That was the most fun coming back to the shop and going. They literally, our mechanic here over at Cloakworks had to find another JK frame, and instead of shipping the frame out here, he just had him cut the sections of the frame that had the coil buckets on both sides and weld those in.
Wow. You definitely put your product to its test on that day.
Yes, sir. It was all intentional.
So now that you've shared your biggest, most embarrassing moment on the trail, what's your biggest trail win?
Trail, that is easily any time I'm out with a bunch of other people that I'm just having a great time with, especially when a bunch of Metal Cloak customers. And I'll go back and I'll tell a little story, because in developing suspension, we started out with body armor and fenders, and we were running other people's suspension systems. And I've got a dozen stories about just being surprised by our own suspension. In the early days, I was the one driving the JK out. My business partner, Aaron, would take the TJ out. I would take the JK out. And we were out at BFE. And I'm with Ian Johnson. And Ian has a little run going on. I thought I'd join him. So we're going out and we're wheeling and going up this one little section. I don't remember what the trail name is, but as you're going up this trail, you're coming down, and like many of the trails out there, you got to come over the 4-foot ledge and immediately cut right, or else if you keep going straight, you get out another ledge that's much deeper on that side. So it's immediate cut right. And again, fairly new with our suspension system, fairly new bringing it out there, just still trying to learn what it can do. We know it can flex. We know it does great ride quality, but just seeing it and having the confidence in it, like you do in any rig, like when you build your rig, you got to build your confidence. And just coming off that edge and doing that hard right turn, and just the rig just soaked up everything, never carried a tire, never did anything that would just that put in any sort of jeopardy. And I stopped at one point and I got out to look at some photos, and because a bunch of guys were taking photos as well. And seeing that and seeing everybody just looking at how proud I was that we had built something that was so capable that everybody else was impressed by. And again, we were new at all of this, and it was a great moment for us and for me to see that. So I have a lot of those kind of stories, but I think for me, it's more the stories I hear from other customers out there, because when they're on the trail and they're telling me, hey, I just did this, or they're sending me a video of some place that they just went, or some area, some trail they just went up, or something their Jeep did, or the fact that they had a previous product on it, now they have our product on it and it's doing well. Those are like the true moments of pride. Those are the true moments of glory for me. And yes, I could talk about racing and all that kind of stuff, but since all my racing glory was local, and anytime I went on the King of the Hammers, I ended up like breaking at mile 3 both years. So,
Hey,
but there's nothing better than a beer after you've been out in King of the Hammers for the day.
Well, I think it's time to talk Metal Cloak. So, can you tell us the story of how Metal Cloak began?
So Metal Cloak, I have 2 business partners, and Doug and Aaron, and both of them are brilliant. Doug is the engineer who comes up with all these crazy things. He has about 24 patents to his name, and Aaron is just a great operations guy, able to run manufacturing facility and work out effective ways to do manufacturing. And I came along as the mouthpiece. I'm the marketing mouthpiece, sales end of things, the official BSer. And Doug and Aaron had known each other for years. I knew Doug for a few years doing other stuff. In fact, Doug and I did some beer festivals together. I used to do a professional golf league called the National Golf League, and the National Golf League was team-based golf. It was really cool because when they were on the green, they didn't want you to be quiet. You'd get out there and go, 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 go. You know, it was totally different types of golf. So we did beer festival around that. Imagine having a golf tournament where the ninth green is a beer fest. Like there's just 20 different breweries on either side, people drinking, people cheering you on. So we got together and started to do this. Well, Aaron and Doug bought a company that had been closed for a year. That company was called Rev 111. Rev 111 used to be Rev 1. And historically, they were the first company to make a full replacement tube fender. The original product in 2003 was for a CJ. There's still guys out there running the original CJ replacement fenders. And they started developing one for the TJ. And in 2006, they released the arch tube fender system for the TJ, a system they called the Metal Cloak. And it included rockers. Their original rockers were a 6-position design rocker where you could have 6 possible locations on the flip step. Their fender was the arch tube fender, which you either loved or you hated, but gave you the type of clearance you'd get from a Highline kit on a TJ without cutting your hood. Every little factor was thought about through it. Rear fenders with clearance. Unfortunately, they had a limited supply of capital to be able to produce these products. They had an investor that said, here's how much you can put up, and here's how much I'll put up, and when that's gone, it's gone. They ran out and they couldn't do anymore, and they closed down. So basically closed for about a year. Great guys. But they put up the company for sale. Interestingly enough, the guy who was the business broker is a man named Aaron, who also owned PRP until that got sold over to the Best Stock Group. But Aaron hooked us up with buying the assets of this company. They were down in Temecula. We moved them up here to Sacramento. Now, this was January 5th, 2009. And unless we have short memories, 2008, 2009 was a very interesting time to be starting a business. It was great for us because all the local, where we located in Rancho Cordova, anything we needed was here. Laser cutting, tube bending, supply, all that stuff here is an industrial area. And everybody was hungry for work. So we had rapid prototyping happening. We were able to build product and get it going and get it moving. The plan was we'd take about 3 to 4 months to get things figured out and maybe do some redesign to be able to make sure the product was effective to manufacture. And well, the moment the rumor got out somehow that Rev 111 was back, we started getting phone calls. And those phone calls turned into orders. I mean, they had enough of a fan base on this basic product line that we were getting orders right away. It took us a few months to get delivery up and running. We redesigned the product to make it easier to manufacture to what is now considered the Telltale Metal Cloak ball lock joint at the end from what they originally had as for their connection points. All these things that were part of easier to manufacture, making it stronger so that when I was 250 pounds, I could jump up and down on it and be no problem. Thankfully, I'm not 250 anymore. I got to thank my wife for that one. And it was just that's where it started. So we started with 3 products. Now, 12 years later, we have over 950 SKUs. Originally, we were just fenders, bumpers, rockers. We started doing the YJ. In fact, we prototyped and had a YJ ready within 2 weeks for Off-Road Expo that year in 2009. And we took a little while to get into the JK market. Now, for those of you that know a little bit of history, 2009 was also the year that Larry McRae, my buddy Larry McRae, bought Poison Spider from Clifton. He focused immediately on the JK. Smart decision on his part. We were focusing on getting the TJ product line up and going. He focused on creating the JK product line. And pretty much Poison Spider owned the JK body armor line for years. And we were always playing a little bit of catch up to that. We had a completely different product line, so we weren't competing directly because our stuff was always unique, always different. But then we transitioned into suspension. That came about because of our own products. That came about because we had this high clearance fender and you couldn't take advantage of it because your shock was your limiting factor. And my engineer, Doug, partner, he comes out and goes, well, that's stupid. Like, I just built this fender that has all this extra clearance, and your tire can't get into it because the shock is a limiting factor. Well, the way Doug does, he goes to sleep, wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and comes up with an idea. So he came up with this idea. He comes back to us and says, we're going to make a shock. Like, well, you recognize that we make nothing with any working part. We don't make anything that actually has to work. It's bolts on, it bolts off. But 3 months later, we had a working prototype, and the rest is history. We started out with the 6-pack shock. Then Doug invented the Duraflex Joint. And it's fair to note that our entire history, every product we've created has required me to spend at least 6 to 8 months educating the public as to why it's going to work and why it is a good idea and why it'll long term. Because the arch fender, loved it or hate it, the whole idea of a removable flare had to be handled. The whole idea that our fenders were bolt on. I mean, we really had bolt on fenders. Like, we would say, I'd go onto the forum and say, so our bolt on fenders, and they'd go, that's not true. There's nothing that actually just bolts on. So we literally had to send fenders out to a guy on the forums and have him install them, going, guys, they actually did just bolt on. I didn't have to drill. I didn't have to grind. I didn't have to do anything, right? Because we're talking 12 years ago, and that was pretty commonplace. So we built the 6-pack shocks, Duraflex joints, all these things, and started getting a little bit more momentum on suspension. We chose gold. I mean, like, who does that? Who does gold for their control arms? And now it's the stain. I mean, when we do something that's not gold, they get mad at us. Like, everything's gold. Our skid plates are gold. Everything we do is, if it's under the Jeep, it's gold. I think it matters if we don't do it. So it's been a fun ride, but it's all because we listened to our customers and had some great people out there and just had fun with it.
So you hit on a couple products that I did want to talk about.
Sure.
Tonight. So let's go ahead and start off talking about the Duraflex joints. So how do they compare to other joints, and what makes it better than a typical flex joint?
Well, the challenge of the typical flex joint, and for all deference to companies like Curry and the Johnny joint and what they've done, because it's guys like that led the industry, there's working parts in there. And one of the challenges you have over time, and the reason why they have to be constantly greased, is that you have micro vibrations. We were building a suspension system that, and I'll use a little background here. At the time, Doug's car was an $80,000 Lexus. He loved how quiet and simple that was and how smooth it was. He got into a Jeep with a lift kit on it. At the time, it was a Rubicon Express kit. And he goes, this sucks. Like, he couldn't handle how bad the drive was. So he wanted to find a solution. So the way his mind works, he started looking at what an OEM bushing was, just a rubber bushing. And then he started looking at what a flex joint was. Well, it's a ball with little cups and flex. Well, part of Doug's background is he worked with a particular rubber that had to go through a round of testing that was about 2 million cycles, right? And he was familiar with this rubber. So because of his own history, he was able to look at that and started experimenting with the idea of you have a rubber joint like the OEM has, and then you have no moving parts. So you don't, when you're going down the road, even though you're just driving, you're getting micro vibrations. And it's those tiny little thousands and thousands and thousands of micro vibrations that can tear up the joints over time. Because we spend more time on our roads with especially the daily driver like a JK or the TJ or even, the JL now, we spend more time on the road than sometimes we do off-road. If you're building a pure off-road rig, heck, like my race car, you can use Heinz. It doesn't really matter. It's off-road all the time. But when you're on the road, you wanted to have something that ran great and lasted. So the micro vibrations tear it up. And we know micro vibrations work. I got one of those Quip toothbrushes that just put on there and just zzz, little micro vibration. And that's what's happening on the inside of that joint. So we wanted to eliminate that. One way to eliminate that is to have no moving parts. And so the rubber being vulcanized around a center ball, because it is a ball, it's not just a tube going through like some of the other companies that have come out with other joints now to try to get that same kind of ride quality. They simply have a tube going through. Well, the tube can be bound for failure because there's nothing keeping it in there. Whereas our ball is actually in there, it's encapsulated by rubber. And so it has the full flex of a ball joint, but with the rubber that we use is designed with a perfect durometer to make sure that you have the ride quality you want, the comfort you want, eliminating the NVH, that noise, vibration, and harshness from the road, and still be able to get off on the trail and out there and play and flex like crazy. So really, it's the best of both worlds, taking the best of what Curry developed years ago, combining it with what the OEM is, and creating the new generation of joints. I made you guys speechless.
Yeah. It's funny how, like with a lot of suspension design, the closer you can kind of get to the manufacturer's OEM specs and like the geometry and everything, the better ride quality you're going to get out of it. And so it's interesting to see how that plays into the Duraflex joint with using the rubber to get that ride quality back.
Right. And in hindsight, it seems like an obvious idea, but when we came out with it, almost immediately we were hit with, well, rubber's not going to last. It's going to fail, right? And then 10,000 miles later, hey, these are working great. 20,000 miles later, we had customers posting 30,000 miles. I just pulled out my joints, and they're posting them on the forums, right? And the forums, it says, look, and they look brand new, right? And so, and we've had, like any of it, we've had manufacturing failures at time where it devulcanizes just because whatever happens, something happened in the manufacturing process. But we've always been known. Look, my monitors went off. We've always been known as the company that takes care of people. So it doesn't matter if we make mistakes. It doesn't matter if we have problems. We're going to take care of you. One of my primary philosophies is that if we can't keep our customers happy, we have no reason to be in business.
Ben, you're muted.
Apparently, I double muted myself. So I was at the Duraflex joints on the your guys' website, and I was pleasantly surprised at the cost for rebuilding one, or even buying just the whole with the housing and all that. $39 for the housing and $19 for, is it the rebuild kit, or $29 for the rebuild kit? I mean, that's
and that's a rebuild kit, includes extra points. They're only $19 for the bushing, and even then, if the customer calls us and he has bushings worn out, we'll send them new ones. We're not gonna make them go on. We have customers going there. We have those full rebuild kits. Like after several years, somebody wants to just replace all of their bushings, right? And it's not a big deal. They're just bushings, and they last a long time. And what you get out of them is just incredible, because it's a huge part of why our kits feel so good on the road and flex so well. And part of why we go out there, we do the CTI trailer across the country. And we've tested over 7,000 Jeeps since we started doing the CTI trailer since 2014. There's no other company in the world that has tested 7,000 vehicles and looked at all the different suspensions, and all that data is captured. We have all that data about every suspension company, what their results were based on tire size, based on setup, based on shocks, all of that. And we just use that data to make our systems better.
So for those who don't know about the CTI, can you explain how that differs from the RTI that everybody's familiar with?
Sure. RTI was kind of the thing. And in fact, when we built our suspension, I used to look at it and go, hey, look, this company over here is testing their suspension, and they just put on a suspension, and look what the RTI did. And Doug, my brilliant partner, and his normal way of doing things, would turn around and go, let's take a look at this. And he'd go up there, and one of these things happened with the JK four-door when our suspension system and the way it was set up, we were driving to the top of a 30-degree RTI ramp. Didn't teach us much about our capabilities of our suspension. And Doug's like, this is stupid. I mean, why are we testing like this? Why? One, it's dangerous. And you and I have all, so if you've been around, you've seen a beautiful rig go up on an RTI ramp, end up on its side, and it's such a shame because somebody wasn't paying attention. It's a bit of a thrill. I mean, you're in the driver's seat, you talk about it off camera, it's a bit of a thrill. You keep hoping that guy is paying attention as you go up it. But when you're actually wheeling, like I mentioned TDS TDS is all about this. And for the viewers, you see what I'm doing, but it's your axles are constantly going back and forth against each other. They're crossing over. And that's what the CTI ramp tested. It was one side, like passenger side front, driver side rear is lifted up. We have 4 pads on the table. We started out with these little pads that we rolled out. Literally, you had to drive your Jeep up. We'd roll these pads underneath, and they were kind of like just little airbag lifts, scissor lifts, and you'd drive the Jeep up on there, and then very slowly with the air compressor, and like 4 minutes later, it's lifted up and stretched out, and then we'd bring it back down. And we actually would take that to an event. People were very interested in that. It's like, let's build a trailer. So the trailer, you drive up on the trailer, has 4 pads, because we can do both. We can do driver's side front, passenger side rear, or passenger side front, driver's side rear. But we're lifting them up until another tire comes off the ground. So it's really showing how much articulation you get out of your rig based on your setup. We track what your tire pressure is, but we don't care when you're doing it. We track information about your rig, but unlike RTI, we don't care about tire size. We don't care about axle length. We don't care about wheelbase. We don't care about any of that. It's purely based on your setup, how you have your rig right now at this moment of time. What's the score you get? And so we look at it and we're able to know, like, shocks can be interfered with. There could be interference in track bar. When we do it at an event, Corey goes around. Corey lives in Colorado. He's the one that goes out across the country. And if you've been out at an event, you've seen him. He goes out there. He spends anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes on each rig, not only lifting it up, but then walking around and looking for problems. How can you improve your system? And it's not that it's just a Metal Cloak system, or we're not simply trying to sell people on our product. We're simply going through and trying to make their systems better. And we've had everything on that trailer, from the most home built XJ you'll ever see to fully built up Evo double throwdown JK systems. I mean, everything on there. We've had everything you can think of on those rigs. Even little guys like, oh, I want to see if I can get my little my Renegade on there and check out the CTI score, or old Suzuki's, or I even had a whole Chevy Silverado built up. I've had everything on there. But the point being that the purpose of it was, 1, to see how we stood out and how our system worked in testing it. 2, there's a certified way of doing it. We tend to do what we call estimated CTIs out at events, which is just fun. Certified, we hold to a certain standard, and we actually test other products as well to see where they stand up, right? So we're looking for a certified test based on 15 PSI, certain little things we will do to make sure that they are all standardized. And so again, where do we stand up? How can we improve our systems? Cloakworks here, our build shop, will use it after they build a customer's rig, just to throw it up there and go, oh, good, there's no interference. We got everything right. It's all dialed in. Show the customer what he got for his money in his build. And it's a great way of dialing in. I've had shops that will show up with customers at an event, go, all right, I have 10 customers that came with me. I want to throw them all up on there and make sure that our customers' rigs are dialed in, because the CTI trailer's here and they just want to show it off. So it really is a great way. It's a fun thing to do to check out your rig. It's a great way for us to learn, because again, we've done 7,000 rigs and we've documented every one of them. And it's a great way for customers just to see how they can make their rigs better.
That's awesome. I've always wanted to go on a CTI trailer. I first heard about one. I want to say it was through Duraflex when they had gotten theirs, and it's very cool. Just to be able to see, it's like not limited to one tire going up the ramp. It's all of them getting moved around.
Well, and the concept actually called CTI, by the way, everybody stands for Corner Travel Index. RTI is Ramp Travel Index. CTI is Corner Travel Index. And we recently we actually patented the trailer, because it was our concept, our idea to build this thing and to do it. So we patented the trailer idea, copyrighted the concept of Corner Travel Index, because at first we actually put it out there like, hey, clubs, build these things. And then they were coming to us and going, will you build a trailer for us? Well, quite honestly, to build one is probably about a $40,000 trailer. and it's not yet at a production level where others can use it. However, there are some shops that have done clever stuff. Like there's a shop, St. George, Dixie Off-Road. I think they're out in St. George, Utah, or that area. They actually have built pads into their showroom floor and outside. Now, they primarily use them as display, but they're done the same way as a CTI, but they could do a CTI with them easily. But they just do it just to raise up a couple opposing wheels and display a built rig. But that's a clever way of doing it and building it up. So others have done it. Some guys have used bottle jacks, a combination of bottle jacks and just their own home built system to be able to do tests. But there was one out there, I don't know if you remember, but for a short period, ARB had a trailer. And it might be the one you were thinking of, Ben, where you drove on it. And the purpose of it was to specifically show that their lockers worked really well. Because essentially when you drove on this thing, it would go up and obviously it would force you to carry a tire. Because no matter what rig you're on, it would force you to carry a tire. And then it would pull you through. But I think they did that like 1 year. It was a long trailer. I mean, they had to fold the thing out. But I think they must have had a flop or two because all of a sudden it disappeared. But it was a cool idea. I always wanted to get one of our rigs on there because I was pretty much going to bet money that we wouldn't carry a tire throughout it.
Having somebody flop off of it would be a good reason to get rid of it.
Yeah, sure. Especially a company of ARB size.
Yeah.
And then liability comes to mind.
Yes.
So, how do the six-pack shocks work, and how do they improve your tire, your wheel travel, and all that?
Well, the idea on the six-pack shock is you really have 4 shocks in one. There's 2 shocks at the top and 2 shocks at the bottom. Each shock is about a 1-inch size shock. So the real functioning of them is that you have a compact body with a long travel. Now, people have been trying this for years. And I've even Dave Cole over at Ultra 4 Racing, I had a conversation because he took on his Toyota, he took 2 shocks, opposed them to each other, tried to strap them together, and tried to build his own variation because he realized the idea of having this long travel. The innovation for the six-pack shock came by having the shocks in parallel to each other and actually having 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top, that they were working in parallel with each other, and so they balanced each other out. There's 2 separate circuited systems, and there's 2 reservoirs. So if you look at a six-pack shock, it has 2 red tubes. Each red tube is a reservoir, a nitrogen reservoir, and one is circuited towards one side and the other is circuited towards the other side. So there's a lot of advantages to it. The fun part about it is you have a long travel compact body. So you can take and put a 15-inch travel shock in a stock location on the front of a JL. Right? On the JL, we put 15s. On our 3.5-inch kit, we put 15s front and rear. 15 inches travel in the front and rear of JL, bolted into the stock location. On the JK, it's 13 inches in the rear, 15 in the front. But the real advantages to it outside of the fun part of getting all that travel is that each shaft is doing a quarter of the load. Because each of those 1-inch sides, people used to look at those six-packs and go, they must be huge because they were used to, king shocks and these big Fox shocks and 2-inch shocks. No, each one of those is only 1 inch in size because they're sharing a quarter of the load. Number 2, the shafts are only doing half the distance for the same amount of travel. So heat generation is down. We have 6 individual tubes, so heat dissipation is up. One of the first times we had those shocks out at Death Valley, we were running with a bunch of guys out there. It was a big media run and going out there. After an hour running 70 miles an hour through Death Valley, one of my guys here got out of the Jeep and he went around, and just for the fun of it, he went to touch a few other shocks, and you couldn't get your hand next to him. But you could put your hand on the six-pack because of its heat dissipation qualities. So these were some of the things we started learning about the six-packs after we built them specifically to have the travel advantage, was that they had these other advantages too. And you get a call from a customer one day going, man, I damaged my six-pack. Well, what did you do? Well, I was going up a ledge in Moab and I came back down and I smashed it right on a rock because, quite frankly, the location of shocks in the rear of a JK and a JLs kind of suck. And he smashed it right on a rock. He hit that tube. Normally his vacation would have been over. He would have to go get a new shock. Well, he only messed up one half of the shock. So the other half was fully functional. So he still had a fully functional shock that he could drive and enjoy the rest of his vacation, go wheeling with. Didn't get as much travel out of that side, but it didn't matter. He didn't ruin his vacation by having a broken shock that he had to go fix.
Yeah, it's nice having something that can have a little redundancy built into it, especially for some of those long trips like that.
Absolutely. And again, these were the advantages of it that didn't necessarily part of the planning. Although if you talk to Doug, he goes, "Oh yeah, I knew that."
Takes credit for it
It's all
anyway.
part of the plan.
Yeah.
So
How have you guys gotten to the point of shock fade with those on like high speed bumping?
Dude, what's that? I didn't get that. Sorry.
Have you gotten to the point where you've gotten shock fade out of them with all of that?
Well, it's interesting because we had guys in the beginning that were using the 6-packs as out using them desert running, going out there pre-running with them, and they weren't built for them. They really aren't built for high speed racing. We've been asked by guys, "Hey, we want to run on a race rig," and we've said no. They're not built for them because you really are a smaller shock. So we haven't done a lot of high speed testing with them. Now, I say that unofficially. Of course, I have, and for the most part, it's been fun. But it's been really, I think we haven't taken to the point where we've seen any sort of shock failure occur at that highest point. We have played with the idea of a coilover variation. We've played with the idea of even doing a smaller version, like a 4-pack, and trying it. We did try to do an emulsion version, and it didn't quite work because you had, it was called a 4-pack, and it didn't work because you really needed that nitrogen to be able to be out there and be able to pull in and out. The emulsion side, just when you have two shocks going different directions, it didn't work as well as we wanted it to. So we do a lot of experimenting with it, and who knows what the future holds with the 6-pack. But it's interesting. We talk more people out of the 6-packs than we talk into it because it's cool. And some guys will call up and say, "Yeah, I want to do the 6-pack shocks." The first question is, "Okay, tell me about your rig. Tell me about what you do." If you don't have aftermarket fenders on the JL, it's a little different because the Rubicon fenders give you so much more clearance. But if you have a Sport on a JL, or if you don't have aftermarket fenders on a JK, you're buying something that's cool, but it's $1,600 of cool. And I'd rather sell you my Rock Sport shocks at a super fraction of the price because you don't need the 6-packs. You don't need everything that comes out of the 6-packs. And like any reservoir shock, the 6-packs require maintenance. It's interesting because one of the things we tell people is you cannot test the 6-pack with like an air tire gauge because literally the is all it takes to take it from 150 psi to 80 psi because the reservoir is so small that literally when we fill them up, it's that quick and they're filled up. In fact, you have to use a no loss valve that our friend Steve Sasaki over at Power Tank, he has this kit specifically. If somebody calls and says he has 6-pack shocks, he has a nitrogen kit specifically for them because that way you can go out there and fill it yourself if you want to. But like any nitrogen shock, over time, they will lose a little bit of nitrogen. When I had King coilovers on my race rig, I'd lose nitrogen, but the only way I'd know about it is by going and refilling it. On the 6-packs, they will actually tell you when they are empty. By one side will collapse down to almost nothing. If it's down to 2 inches, it's not a big deal. But when it goes down to nothing on one side, it's time to add nitrogen. And occasionally you might have a leak or whatever, and we fix those. You send them to us, we rebuild them, send them back to you. But for the most part, it's just a matter of a little bit of maintenance on them, and they last a lifetime. They're fully rebuildable. So for that $400, you're getting a shock that you can send it in anytime, rebuild it. If it is a normal wear rebuild, like you've had them for 5 years, it's time to rebuild them. It's $75 to rebuild.
So I bet Doug would claim that the indicator that it's low on nitrogen was a design feature too, huh?
Yeah, everything about that was a design feature. If you didn't like something about it, it's probably my fault. It was probably my suggestion. Like, hey, can we get those in blue instead of black? Or can I get all black tubes instead of red tubes? And
so I also wanted to talk about the lock and load lifts.
oh,
So briefly describe the lock and load in case somebody hasn't heard of it? And also, what is the benefit? And can you drive it unlocked on road? And what does that do to your handling?
So we like radius arms. And part of the things about radius arms, especially on the TJ, is the ease of installation, right? If you really want to dig into building a rig, there's nothing better than a 4-link front and rear. But the radius arm is a great, easy way for somebody to go for long arm. Now, for years on our JK kits, we had the 3.5-inch mid-arm kit. You didn't need a long arm because if you had a 3.5-inch kit, you still don't need a long arm because our 3.5-inch kit outperformed 3.5-inch long arms. And again, we have 7,000 Jeeps to prove it. But we said, well, we want to go into 4.5-inch and 5.5-inch. So our first 4.5-inch kit and our first 5.5-inch kit was still mid-arm, but we used a really clever design of front and rear drop brackets to be able to use the mid-arm and give you the same kind of geometry you wanted. And then it was time for long arm kits. People kept asking for it. We've been doing the JK for 6 years now. It was like, finally it was time. So we came out with the lock and load, and we came out with a 4-link at the same time. Probably too confusing for our customers, but it was still a lot of fun. The lock and load is essentially a radius arm fixer. The problem with radius arms is they put too much bind, because if you guys are going to watch the video, you can see my fingers do the thing, but the radius arm puts a lot of bind on the axle. We've probably all known people who have broken an axle or had somebody break on the trail because they were running like an old Rubicon Express radius arm or one of the other companies. And when you're out there articulating heavily, there's a lot of bind going on the axle and the axle side brackets, and it could tear off. So we went, well, if you're going to do a radius arm, you got to solve this problem. So Doug's idea initially was like, well, what if you put a shock on there? And it wasn't necessarily a new idea. I think Carly had done that. They had done a variation of that for some Dodge kits. But Doug went, no, that's not good, because you need to have something that's going to be solid for your daily driver, like a solid arm, but also have articulation when off-road. Hence the name locked and loaded. So the way the system works is when it's locked, in the locked position, it's like a solid arm, which you want on your daily driver for the best possible stability. The loaded is when you open it up and you just load it and you have a spring in there. The videos on our site show that there's about 3/4 of an inch of movement that happens when you're just watching the rig articulate on our CTI trailer when we're doing our testing. That happens. On a regular typical radius arm, that's 3/4 of an inch of pressure that's going against those brackets, right? Well, in the lock and load, that's 3/4 of an inch of spring movement that's happening. There's just a very tough spring in there that goes and allows that rig, that arm, and it only is on one side. We have it on the passenger side. You don't need it on both sides. You just need to take away a little bit of that relief on one side. So on one side, you get 3/4 of an inch of movement on your full, complete articulation, and it relieves the brackets and the pressure on the axle, and it stops that bind that occurs. And for guys that have been anti-radius arm, like there's some companies out there that say no radius arms, blah, blah. It's because of that problem. Well, we fixed the problem with the lock and load. The cool thing about it, again, now you ask the question, and I'll give you the unofficial answer, because for safety purposes, you should have this locked at all times. However, I have been known to drive long distances with the lock and load in the loaded mode, just for purposes of testing, and didn't have any sort of control issues because it's still there. Have I done anything extreme, like trying to avoid a semi-truck coming at me at 60 miles an hour? No. So I don't know. But we do recommend having it locked because that just gives you a nice solid arm. Probably better for towing, especially if you're doing it, because we have that lock and load is not only on the TJ lock and load kit and on the JK lock and load kit. We'll probably be on the JL lock and load kit when that comes out, which is a long ways away because we've got so much on our list to do for the JL. But it's also, and everybody who watched the video from Off-Road Expo last year, it is also on our Dodge Ram kit. It's not the same lock and load. It's friggin' massive. It's huge. It's like the size of, well, it's bigger than my forearm, but it is totally cool. And it sits actually on the driver's side on the Dodge, which is just easier to get to, that sort of thing. But it makes that Dodge kit phenomenal. And we've towed with it in a loaded mode. to see how it worked, towed the CTI trailer with a Jeep on it, which is 15,000 pounds of total weight behind the rig, slammed the brakes on it, did all that kind of testing, and it did pretty darn good.
That's really awesome. Have you you guys have always been very Jeep centric. Are you guys going to branch out? I mean, you mentioned the Dodges, so are you branching out more? Maybe the new Bronco?
Well, we'd like to. Again, got to get our hands on it. We might get our hands on it and go, yeah, there's nothing for us here. Or we might get our hands on it and go, oh, baby, let's have fun. But as it is, we have a hard enough time just keeping up with what Jeep's putting in front of us. Like I said, I got the 4XC to deal with. I've got diesel JT to deal with, and there's more and more coming. The Dodge is a big initiative for us. As those that follow us know, we released it. We showed off the system, which is going to be the really first Dodge kit focused on heavy articulation, right? I mean, it really is. We'll have two kits coming out. One is just your standard. I want to put a lift on my Dodge, and I want my standard radius arms, non-lock and load, fixed radius arms. And our second kit's going to be the full lock and load flex kit, designed to just get flexy off-road. That's coming up, and we expect that to come out this year, be able to actually before Thanksgiving sale weekend, because I don't know if you can call it Black Friday weekend anymore, but sale weekend. Sorry, I didn't want to get political with you guys. And that's coming up. So that is a big thing. And the Bronco, most definitely, we will look at, and we'll see what we can do. I'll be the first to admit, we are not specialists in IFS. There's a lot of companies out there that have been doing IFS for a long time. So we'll look at it, and we think that we have some great technology that will make the IFS even better. Some stuff that we currently use that we think will be fantastic for it. But it's going to take us digging into it and do what we do, which is, I mean, once we get a Bronco, it may be a year before you see anything from us, because we test, and test. The advantage of having the Rubicon Trail an hour and a half from you is put some together and go out there and beat it up, and then come back. And our goal not only is does he make it through the trail? Like you pointed out that the Broncos kind of made it through the trail. Well, we want to make it through the trail and drive home and to work on Monday. That's our goal. You know, I have a customer, and Donagawa, he drives his Jeep 200 miles a day because he drives to the Bay Area and back every day from Sacramento to the Bay Area. It's 200 miles a day. Almost every weekend, he's out wheeling. Almost every weekend, he's doing the Rubicon, doing Fordyce, doing something at one of the great trails around here. Monday morning, he's in that same rig, and he's doing his commute out to the Bay Area and back. And that's our customer. That's what we're trying to do. Go have fun on the weekends, be that weekend warrior, but get back in your vehicle and have it feel just as good as it did Friday.
So we kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, that iconic gold coating. So my background is in I'm a naval structural engineer, and when I saw saw your guys' description of it being the zinc coating, it just made so much sense to me to do that, because I work with zincs as a sacrificial anode every single day in my work, and it never occurred to me to throw that onto some steel parts on your Jeep to help keep them from corroding. So first off, where did you guys come up with that idea?
One word, Doug. I mean, where he came up with the idea, and he works diligently on when he's designing something on every step of the way, right? One day he comes up and goes, so I'm working on this, and we're going to, so what do you guys think about gold as the color, right? I didn't care about the zinc. I cared like, well, how am I going to sell gold? I mean, what am I going to do to sell people on gold? But the gold zinc chromate, which was, once I understood it, because I'm not an engineer and I'm not a chemist, and I don't, so once I understood the gold zinc chromate, now interestingly enough, I understood zinc because of the sacrificial qualities of it, because I used to sell hot water heater systems, like solar hot water heater systems. And my number one, part of my sales pitch was like, you got this zinc rod inside your hot water heater that's probably after 10 years is completely gone, but I'm going to get you this whole new solar system, and it's got one going all the way through. It's just little things like that. So I understood how the zinc worked, but but doing it in gold on these arms, and how the gold was just a coating to help protect, right, the plating to help protect the zinc. We had to test it. We had to show it. There were times we took some arms. We actually did it ourselves. We took an arm and we completely scratched it up on some rocks, sat it outside for days and weeks. And there was no rust. And I was like, well, this is fantastic. Now, we could have done black zinc, but we tested black zinc. Black zinc scratches way too easily. Came off way too easily. I mean, you could just literally go like this to it, just scratch it a little bit, and it came off. Silver, we actually had our skid plates were a clear white zinc. And that was my big thing, was like, well, there's probably people who will not buy the skid plates if they're gold, because that's a lot of gold into your rig. But there's nobody who's not going to buy them because they're silver. That was my, as marketing, like the marketing genius I was, like that's it. And for a long time, I fought back on having gold, but we did a test run. We did 12. And it was a limited series, 12 gold skid plates. Sold out like that. We did another test run. Sold out. And then I decided to offer both. And of course, everybody who bought the limited series got pissed off that I did both. But I promised them I'd come up with a Sharpie and sign theirs or something if they wanted me to. And we started doing that as a consecutive run. We had gold and silver. And then one day it was silver's gone. And now every skid plate that we had that was silver, we had a silver one on the TJ, it's gold. Our skid plate for the TJ gas tank skid plate, which was black powder coat and aluminum. It's a combination of aluminum and black powder coated steel. And it's been that way for 11 years. Finally, this last year, I was like, why don't we make that gold too? So now that's gold. So everything, all our skid plates, everything under the Jeep is gold. The only thing we haven't been able to figure out how to do is how to do gold fenders, because our zinc coater doesn't like tube like that unless we absolutely guarantee that there's no possible way any fluid can get inside those tubes. But that's the only thing we haven't. And I did it once. I got to tell you guys this. We had a customer back east before we had aluminum who was having a constant problem with rust. And it was a challenge. And we didn't have aluminum fenders yet to solve that. So like, well, I came up with different ways. I did I even personally did some painting on them to try to get into those tight areas where the welds are. I did all these little personal things to try to make it better. And then I turned around and the guy just didn't do it. He just, every time it was a little bit of rust, every time there was some problems, like, let's try this. So I did a set of fenders in gold. This was 2013, before gold was like the thing and everybody wanted gold. And I put them in the back of a pickup truck and I took a photo and I posted it on Facebook. And I thought it was going to be a joke. I was expecting a bit of a shit show from all I got was, oh man, I want those. How do I get those? How do I get those? And it was a little bit of an insight into what we'd see in the future, because gold is now the thing, right? I mean, if you don't have Metal Cloak gold under your rig, right? It's like, wait, what's that? How come and you have the occasional customer, I kid you not, who will paint our stuff and his friends don't forgive him. Like, how could you do that? How could you paint them? Well, I wanted them to match, but it was gold. So we did fun stuff with the gold over the years. We're a bit of patriots over here, as a lot of us are. And one of our 2013, 2014, I think we did a gold standard where for one gold coin, you could buy one of our lift kits. Literally for a 1 ounce gold coin, you could buy one of our lift kits, and did that. And we've done that a couple of times over the years, just to kind of reiterate that there's such thing as gold is still currency. So it's just become the fun. It's the gold standard. It's too easy to say, but it's all because Doug was the guy who had the idea and the gumption to say, this will work and this will be better than anybody else's. And I'm always surprised when a company out there, and again, I love all of our competitors, because without them, we wouldn't be where we are at. And there's so many great companies out there that are great for the industry. We know that we're not the best thing for everybody, right? There are many guys out there that want something different, and for you, there's options. There are a lot of great companies out there, but it is funny when our competitors, when there's rust issues or something on a control arm, and they don't simply embrace that and go, "I can take care of that. I'll take care of that for you." Our customers, they just know when they get Metal Cloak, they get a quality product that they and especially our jobbers, they're going to put a quality product without any warranty issues, and it's just going to take care of them over time.
So how does the coating compare to like powder coating? Like, is there an increased cost for you guys for that?
So as far as the arms themselves,
Yeah.
powder coating actually costs more than the zinc coating, only because of the process, right? Zinc is, but it also depends on the product. Like, we probably couldn't ever do zinc fenders because the fenders just, they're so big, they're so bulky. They'd probably have a special tank to do them, and it's so much easier with the with powder coating for them simply to hang them, blast them, and powder coat them. But with things like control arms, which are small and compact and can easily be hung and used, the big tanks that go in, and it's a chemical process. There's a video that I did years ago that shows that process, and it's a multiple dips. You dip into a certain bath, and you dip into another bath of chemicals, and another bath of chemicals, and ultimately you achieve the gold. And that process is just a repetitive, like it's the same material being used. So the cost of material is low. The hard part is right now in California, if you wanted to get into that zinc coating business, you couldn't do it. You can only go to companies that are grandfathered in. There are just too many rules and regulations to allow a new company to come in and create that. Whereas powder coating is pretty easy to get into, and there's a number of great powder coaters around here. Our powder coater is literally 2 buildings away from us that we've used for almost 12 years.
That's convenient. Keep it a little lean.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, it makes me want to.
Go ahead, Ben.
It says makes me want to see about some custom control arms for my rear end.
So what would you say is your best-selling product?
Our suspension systems. I mean, definitely. Probably the 3.5-inch game changer for the JK is still our number one product out there. The Rock Sport shocks are incredibly popular for what you get with those Rock Sport shocks and the price point, and how much the performance you get out of them. We make them long travel shocks, so they actually have a little bit more travel than your typical shock. It's kind of funny because when other people call us and say, "Well, I want to buy your kit, but with a different shock, like I want to go with a Fox shock or something else," and there are all great companies out there with great products. We generally have to advise them to go and not buy, like if they're getting a 3.5-inch kit from us, buy the shock designed for the 4.5-inch kit, because the amount of travel you get from Metal Cloak kit is more. So you're going to want a shock that can handle it more. But yeah, the game changer, the 3.5-inch JK game changer kit is still the most popular kit probably on the market. The JL is catching up. Obviously, the JL is more of one out there, but there's a lot more JKs on the market, still out there being built than the JL. And the Gladiator is coming along strong. Plus, we have a whole new product line with the acquisition of Cargo Master Safari earlier this year, and their Jeep product line. And that's actually a little bit of thing for your listeners out there. Since you're listening to this, you'll hear this first. At the end of this month, the name's officially changing to Adventure Rack Systems from Cargo Master Safari, just to make it more focused as to what we are doing and move away from that particular brand.
So is there anything you guys thought that you would sell better than when you made it originally? Like, I don't know, like, did you ever make a skid plate and expect it to sell better than it did?
No, I think we enter everything with a minimum, like, hey, if we can sell 20 of these, we'll cover our cost, right? Or whatever it is. It depends on how much engineering goes into it. We've never been a great bumper company. And just, there's a lot of companies out there that focus on bumpers, and we have some really good bumper systems. Like, we were the first one really to do not really just a modular bumper system, but we kind of get made fun of sometimes in the forums when we call our bumpers frame-built bumpers. It was like, well, every bumper fits on a frame. Yeah, but our bumpers were the first ones to really come together where every component could be bolted onto the frame by itself. Like you could have the end caps bolted on the frame by itself. You could have the center section bolted on the frame by itself. You could have the fair leads bolted on the frame by themselves. You could have the hoop. And literally, it was designed so the frame was the center point of all components. And when we first came out with our bumper for the TJ, we had, I think it calculated out to 760 possible options. I will answer your question about something that didn't sell as well as one person thought it would, and that was our polished stainless steel bumper. We had a polished stainless steel bumper base. That didn't last very long. We did have what I called our infinity finish, where we took a stainless steel bumper and we put it through a tumbler, and it came out with these millions of little tiny scratches on them. I call it our infinity finish. That actually sold better than the polished stainless steel bumper. And then we went into had aluminum and base that was all in the TJ, and then the JK bumper system. So we got a lot of customers that want to wrap their rig completely in Metal Cloak, and that's pretty awesome. Like they want to do the suspension system, the rockers, all these things, and that's awesome. It's like we're blessed to have customers with that much dedication. And sometimes they change it up. They do a different front bumper, or maybe they do a different rocker system because they want a different look there, and that's totally fine. You know, we're just happy to be a part of somebody's build and be able to be a part of that. And then, you know, and everything we're doing here, it's all about the future. I'm talking to you guys now, hoping that maybe somebody will listen to it in 2 years from now when he's ready to do something, thinks Metal Cloak, when he's ready to pull that trigger. I will tell you the most surprising product we ever made. If you sit in the back of a JK, and we're the only ones that made this product for years. Finally, 1 or 2 companies started making their own versions. You sit in the back of it, and you sit in the center seat. There is no support. If you go underneath and you look under the seat, there's no structure there. You can take your fist and just kind of go right through it. It's just foam. It's just foam. So what did we make? We took a piece of aluminum plate and we called it a center seat support. And we put it back there. And when we came out with that, and I did a funny video that was commercial, it was more like at the time I happened to have a JT Taylor style mustache going on, because I think it was during Movember, one of those, you know, trying to grow a mustache for November. And I did this funny video, like more like an infomercial, and had to get going there and doing it, selling this, and hey, this is something I didn't think you needed. Boom, 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 and did this whole big thing. And it was true. Most people didn't realize that. They thought when they looked at that and saw there was something missing. I had guys actually go back to the dealership and said, is there something missing here? Like, was there something that was supposed to be here? Did the Jeep mess up? No, they just failed to put something there. The funny thing is they did the same thing on the JL. They failed to put any support in the center seat for the JL. So that little plate, $24, we've sold a bunch of those over time. And the beauty of it is we have such great customer service. When a customer buys that kit, that little plate from us, they experience the Metal Cloak customer service and they come back for more. And it's just been a fun cycle because we bring them into the family, into the Metal Cloak Owners Club.
That is a great way to do it. Bring them in with a lower barrier for entry, and they just see how great you guys are.
It's worked out fine.
Well, Matson, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. You definitely know your product well and definitely represent Metal Cloak well.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So where can the listeners find Metal Cloak?
Well, you can find us at metalcloak.com. You can email me directly at matson@metalcloak.com. And of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram and every other possible social media site you can get out there wherever you happen to be, and you can look us up. We got our YouTube videos. I've mentioned a bunch of videos here. Check us out, youtube.com/metalcloak, and see those. But visit us metalcloak.com and go on to Facebook. Send me a chat. Send me an email. Happy to hear and love talking to all our friends and fans out there.
Don't forget to visit Patriot Patch and join the Patch of the Month Club. Check out our Gaia affiliate link for up to 40% off. Also, don't forget to head over to Warren and Power Tank to see all of their great gear. We are a proud part of the Firearms Radio Network. Got a question or comment? Send it to us through our webpage at firearmsradio.tv or through our social media channels by searching for Off-Road Podcast. Also, you can listen to us live at overlandradio.com, Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. When off-road, please remember to have fun, tread lightly, be safe and courteous, and thanks for listening